It's one of the most popular things to juice these days, but it's also responsible for a lot of broken juicers. Hi, it's Dan with EUJUICERS.COM, and in this video I'll be talking all about ginger. I'll talk about why it's so problematic with juicers. I'll talk about the best way to select ginger in the store. I'll talk about how you should prepare ginger, and I'll also talk about the best kind of juicers to use with ginger. And finally, I'll be juicing a whole lot, 2 kilograms of ginger. So let's get started. A few weeks back, I was contacted by one of our distributors. He sells a lot of juicers and services them too here in Central Europe. And he said he noticed a troubling trend, a lot of broken juicing screens, and most of these were from ginger. Now, that's because ginger is juiced unlike any other type of produce. Most manufacturers only recommend juicing ginger with other types of ingredients at a maximum of 10% ginger in the juice recipe you make. Now, normally that's not a big deal. Ginger is pretty strong. A little goes a long way. One of my favorite juice recipes is carrot, apple, ginger, and lime. And I only need like this much ginger in there, just a little piece, because it's so strong. But the thing is, a lot of people these days are making ginger shots. And ginger shots have a lot more than 10% juice content from ginger. They are anywhere from 30% on the low end to 70% for the real wellness ginger shots. And that's kind of more than these juicers are designed to handle, especially if you're feeding them older ginger or ginger that hasn't been properly prepared. So why is it problematic? It's because of the way these juicers work. Both a horizontal juicer and a vertical juicer work using the same system. They use an auger. Let me pull out a couple here. Here's an auger from a vertical juicer. Let's put them next to their right juicers. Auger from a vertical juicer, auger from a horizontal juicer, and both of these use the same system of juicing. Both of them have a blade at the end. You can notice a blade here, and the way it works, you put produce down the feeding tube, and this initial blade cuts a piece of produce off. These juicers use a 2-stage juicing system. It's cutting and squeezing or compressing. So you put a piece of carrot, cuts a piece of carrot, and the carrot moves down. You notice these fins here get consecutively smaller as it moves down. And that's because those pieces that were cut in the stage 1 are now being squeezed down into a juicing screen that gets smaller and smaller as you get near the tip. Got a juicing screen right here. Let me show you. This goes in there, and you notice how it gets smaller. So those pieces of carrot are cut, and they're squeezed, and by the time it gets to the end, where you see the juicing screen here, it's a juicy pulp. And that juicy pulp is pushed out through all these little holes, and the pulp shoots out the end. Now, it works the same. It's a little different setup in a vertical, but the same general principle. The problem is with ginger. Ginger isn't like any other type of produce. It's a rhizome. That means it's a stem that grows underground. And like any stem, it's made up of a lot of fibers. So this piece of ginger right here is full of different fibers that hold it together. As ginger ages, as these rhizomes get bigger, those fibers get thicker, denser, almost woodier in some cases. So what happens is you put this piece of ginger in the juicer, it cuts off a piece, sends it down, and it starts trying to squeeze it. But ginger doesn't want to be squeezed because of those fibers. It gives it a structure, it holds it together. So what happens is sometimes you get little pieces of like fiber balls, almost like wood bark, and that is pushing under high pressure against the screen in either type of juicer. And that might not break the juicer right away, but over time that's going to wear down the tensile strength of that screen. It's going to make it weaker, more flexible, until eventually, could be a week, could be a month, could be a year, depending on how often you juice ginger and the type of ginger you use and how you prepare it. It's going to break through that screen. Or in the case of horizontal juicer, which has a slightly different system, the screen's stronger because it's a smaller piece of sheet metal. It's going to crack this piece right here. So that's why ginger causes so many problems. Also because it's so fibrous, it can clog these little holes here. So you've got to be careful to clean these pretty frequently. Sometimes if you're juicing straight ginger, which maybe you shouldn't, you might need to stop every, 5-7 minutes and scrub these little holes out because they'll fill up and that's going to increase the back pressure. It's not going to cause a broken screen, but over time it can wear out the gasket. the part between the juicing chamber and the motor. And after a year or two, you might have fully worn down that gasket and that juice can get into the gearbox. So you just got to be really careful when juicing ginger. Like with any type of produce, selection and freshness is always really important, as is preparation. So what do you look for when you go into the shop to buy ginger? Well, if you're one of the lucky ones, and if you live in certain regions, there's kind of a cheat code for juicing ginger, and that is young ginger. It's available throughout Asia. It's now more commonly found in the US as well, especially in Asian specialty food shops. And it's grown specifically for juicing and for cooking. Now, I've looked around here. I'm in the middle of Central Europe, and I haven't come across it, unfortunately, but I have seen people juicing it online. What's different about young ginger? It's not a different cultivar. It's the same ginger as I have here, but it's got two differences. It's grown differently. So it's put into a lighter soil, like a sandier soil, that allows it to spread out, to swell up better, because there's less pressure from heavier soil. And it's also irrigated far more frequently. It's watered a lot, so those ginger rhizomes really swell up. And then the other difference is young ginger means it's harvested early. These guys here were probably harvested 9 to 12 months into their life cycle. Young ginger is harvested around 6 months. And even so, it's often a lot bigger than these because it's been watered so much, it swells up quite a bit. And because it's younger, because it's harvested when it's less mature, those fibers inside haven't had a chance to get really dense and thick yet, so it's a lot easier to juice. But still, even with young ginger, you do want to take some precautions and prepare it properly. But what if you don't have access to young ginger? If you're like me, what do you look for in the store? Well, I have 3 different gingers bought in 3 different places. Now I have here, this was so-called premium ginger, and the country of origin on this guy was Brazil. Cost a little more than the other 2, and it does feel a little better in the hand. Next one over here in the middle, I've got, this was ginger from China, and this was in a big bulk package, 3 kilograms. It came in a big case. And this was probably the best priced ginger. Finally, I have kind of a mystery ginger here. This was bought in a little shop. It didn't say the country of origin. And yeah, bigger bulbs. So I don't know where that came from. So what do you want to look for when you're shopping for ginger, if you can find young ginger? There's a few things. You're looking for the freshest ginger possible. And one indication of that is going to be the weight. If you pick up equal pieces, I can feel on both of these, this guy here is heavier, even though this guy here is bigger. That heaviness means it's fresher. There's been less evaporation of moisture out of it. And yeah, this guy here, you can kind of see it's a little wrinkly. I'm going to hold it up close here. And that's another indication, not just the weight, but the color of the skin. Fresher ginger will be more of a golden color. You can kind of see here, this looks slightly more gold. That young ginger sometimes even looks gray. Fresher ginger has a shinier skin texture. Older ginger has a duller skin texture. Fresher ginger, the skin is tightly pulled around the inside of it, whereas older ginger, just like people, it starts getting wrinkly, it starts getting soft. If you can squeeze the ginger, if you pull it and it doesn't want to snap, you see this guy, he's kind of bending. That's also a sign, as with many other produce like carrots, that it's not completely fresh. Another thing you can do is scratch the surface of the ginger, like even with your fingernail. Like I'm going to scratch here. And if the skin comes off easily, and you see a nice shiny surface underneath, that's a little fresher. You see the skin's coming off, but I'm having to sort of scratch hard there. And the color's a little dull. Might be too small to see. Let me scratch a little more. I could also smell that. It smells pretty good though. Older ginger won't smell so pungent or sharp. Now older ginger, if you're scratching it, it's going to be woodier. And I don't know if you can see, but this one was like flaking off. I have to dig in harder. So this one's definitely older, and I could already tell that. You can also see around the edges here, these little I don't know, nodules at the end. See how plump and firm they look. You know, if you compare these two, this has 3 nodules. This is the premium Brazilian one. These are firm. They're, you know, circular. They're solid. These are kind of faded. You can clearly tell this guy is a lot older. Also, you want to watch out for mold, and I've noticed it on a couple of these here. Ginger will get mold fairly easily. You can kind of see some areas along here. I saw some, I don't know, there's a bit here, but you can kind of see there's a sort of a grayish tinge. And if there's mold on the outside of the ginger, that means there's mold on the inside of the ginger. And it's not something where you just want to cut off that tip, but you may need to throw the whole thing away. So again, when selecting ginger, look for the freshest possible. Feel it, smell it, feel the skin. Do the little scratch test if you can. And fresh ginger will do a lot better than older ginger. Just as important as selecting the best quality ginger is preparing it, maybe even more so, because the problem with ginger and breaking juicers is it's not prepared properly. Too big of pieces are being sent through the juicer. But like with any type of produce, it's 2 steps of prep. First of all is cleaning. Cleaning ginger is just like cleaning any other a root vegetable, like a carrot or something. You're going to want to rinse it under running water, even if it's organic or bio. You can use a brush, you can use a cloth, however you want to use, or you could use something like this. These are scrubbing gloves designed just for cleaning, mainly root vegetables. You just put them on, they have an abrasive surface, and sort of like the back of a sponge, and it just makes cleaning pretty easy. But after you clean it, you're going to want to cut it up. You need to make sure those pieces going through the juicer are really small, so they're not going to damage the juicer. How small? You're probably not going to want to hear this, but a lot of manufacturers recommend cutting ginger to the size of green peas. That small. Other manufacturers say 1/2 centimeter or the size of an almond. My friend, the distributor, who was telling me about ginger and the problems he's encountered, he also recommends 1/2 centimeter as well. So when I actually juice, you're going to see how I've cut it up. And when I say 1/2 centimeter, I'm talking about the lengthwise here. It can still be the whole cylindrical shape here, but you want to make sure those pieces are real narrow. And that also gives a higher yield of juice because it reveals more of the inner flesh, more of the juicy parts are exposed to the juicing parts. So what kind of juicer is best for processing ginger? Now I'm talking about slow juicers, specifically talking about the most popular types, horizontal slow juicers and vertical slow juicers. And generally speaking, if you've got equally good ginger in each one, and if you prepared them equally well, they'll both juice it pretty well, especially if you keep to that 10% maximum rule in the recipe. But overall, horizontals will do a little bit better, and there's a few reasons for that. It all comes down to how they process the ingredients. With a vertical, you're more likely, especially with these newer models, these self-feeding verticals, you're more likely to put in larger pieces of ginger. You might not have seen this video. You might just not have time and want to cut up the ginger into smaller pieces. So it might be tempting just to, throw this in there. And if I put that in there, close it, it starts rotating. These self-feeding juicers, they have a blade in there. It's going to cut that ginger, but it's going to cut it into pretty big pieces and drop it down into the juicing chamber. And once it's in the juicing chamber, this is what the inside of the juicing chamber looks like. You've got the screen and you've got this shorter auger. Now, notice there's a difference between the lengths of these augers here. The horizontal has a much longer auger. That means a smaller piece is going to go in here and it's got farther to travel and more opportunity to be crushed into a little piece. The vertical, it's a lot shorter. So you're going to have bigger pieces going in immediately. You can see these little circles here. That's where it's being pushed against the screen. Let me show you how it fits in the screen here. And you can see a piece goes in here and the pieces are immediately being juiced. That's because the juicing screen starts right at the top. So the vertical doesn't have time to squeeze those pieces of ginger down into a pulp, not nearly as much as this guy here, as the horizontal. And remember, the horizontal only has the screen at the end. It only has the screen right here. So It's a much smaller piece, a much smaller sheet of stainless steel, so it's going to be stronger anyway. It's reinforced a lot better. This is a lot bigger piece. So that's why verticals tend to break screens more often. And while they don't break very often in horizontals can get cracked screens. Again, the screen's going to stay put, but you'll see a crack start forming, and once it's cracked, you need to replace it. The other reason why vertical is more challenging for ginger is because of the pulp ejection system. I'm going to open this up here and show you the inside of the drum. With a horizontal, if I'm juicing ginger, it's juicing and the pulp goes straight out. There's no restrictions, it just shoots right out the front. With a vertical, the pulp has to go, I don't know if you can see, there's a little orange tab there. And this orange tab is, it looks like it's sealed, but under pressure it opens up and the pulp goes out that little hole. It goes out a little channel and then it has to make a 90-degree turn to come out here. And that's problematic for any fibrous ingredients. So that's why celery, in a vertical juicer, you need to cut the celery fibers into small pieces. And it's even more pronounced with ginger. What's going to happen is you'll get a ball of fiber just stuck there. It can't make that corner. And you'll notice while you're juicing that suddenly the pulp isn't coming out anymore and the juice is backing up. That means you need to stop juicing. You need to open this chamber up and clean out that hole. You can see right there. There's a hole right here. And this just pops open and closed. It's not a problem at all in the horizontal because it's a straight shot. So generally speaking, if you're comparing horizontal and verticals, horizontals will do better, especially in real world usage where people tend to not cut things into the proper size. But there is one juicer that my distributor friend recommends for ginger. In fact, it's now the only juicer he recommends, and we're going to juice some ginger in it right now. So this is the juicer, the only juicer our distribution partner here in Central Europe now recommends. This is the Sauna 929 Ultimate. And the reason he recommends it is just really the strength and durability of it. It has a lifetime warranty. It's made from solid stainless steel. And notice it's got these two different juicing screens. It's got a fine screen here that's used for most produce. But for things like ginger, pineapple, more fibrous produce, it has this coarse screen. It has larger holes on it. It's going to be easier on the juicer. Also remember, the horizontal juicers, the screens typically don't break. The part that would break would be a crack in this frame. Well, that's not going to happen in something like this. This is really heavy. It's thick. It's solid stainless steel. So it's not going to break. So what I'm going to do, I've measured out 2 kilos of that ginger. I had to go through a lot of it because there were some moldy pieces in there. And I'm just going to see how long it takes. The Sauna 929 also has this pressure adjustment. Notice this dial at the end. It goes from 0 to 3. 3 is the highest pressure, 0 is the lowest pressure, and that's just how tight the pulp outlet's going to be. It can compress it. So I'm going to keep it fully open on 0, and then if things are going well, I'll start adjusting it up to 3. Really what I want to do, I want to see how much juice I get out of these 2 kilos, but I also want to see how frequently I need to stop, if it backs up, how frequently I need to clean the screen, things like that, because 2 kilos is a lot of ginger. So let me get started and see how it goes. So I just finished, and it took pretty much about 10 minutes. It took slightly more because it did have a jam one time. The 929 auto reverses. When it jams, it will stop the motor. It'll go backwards to clear up any jams and then move forward. I didn't have to clean the screen. I did at one point take off this pressure ring to kind of clear out some of the ginger fibers in there. But otherwise I didn't have to clean anything. I didn't have to open it up. and it did 2 kilos in about 10 minutes. And here's what I got. I filled up the first glass to a liter, and I've got 700 in the second. So that's 2 kilos. So each kilo would be 850, which is actually quite good for ginger. And again, that's because these are slow press, high pressure systems. And that was with the coarse screen with the bigger holes. If I used the fine screen, I could have got a little more yield, but that could cause more backup. Fortunately, I didn't experience any backup. And take a look at the pulp here. It's actually really dry. It's like wood fibers almost, or sawdust is what it feels like. There's no moisture at all in there. So I can see why our partner recommends this, and I would definitely recommend it as well if you're juicing a lot of ginger. So thanks for watching. If you have experience with juicing ginger, I'd be really curious how it goes. If you have access to young ginger, tell me where you are, because especially if you're in Europe, I would be really curious to try some young ginger out myself. But again, this was older ginger, not the best quality, and got quite a good amount of yield. I can see why the Sauna 929 is recommended for it. Thanks for watching this video. I'm Dan with EUJUICERS.COM, and I'll see you next time.